The story starts right in the middle of the action, while a tour guide is trying to explain and show the tourists the wonderful city of New York, when an armored truck appears out of nowhere, running over everything in front of it and causing chaos and destruction. The truck is headed straight for them, and it looks certain that everyone will die. Luckily, Spider-Man shows up at the last moment and uses his webs to steer the truck away and make sure no one gets hurt. The bad news is that this isn't the only problem, because a few seconds later, our hero ends up getting run over by a van driven by Frank Castle, better known as the Punisher. Frank points a grenade launcher at him and tells him to get out of his way. It's time for him to stop meddling in his business, or he'll get hurt. But Peter decides to take option B and uses his webs to block the barrel of the weapon. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop the projectile, and Frank shoots him right in the chest, sending him flying. Peter lands on the armored truck in front of him and then throws himself flying toward Frank's windshield, managing to break through it and land a kick that knocks him out of the car. Then he tells him it would be best for him to go home and leave the job to the heroes. With the Punisher out of the equation, Spider-Man goes back to chasing the armored truck, which is about to reach its destination. It looks like it's headed straight for a prison, where a villain named Scorpion is being held, who is about to be transferred. Peter can't stop them from reaching the prison, but he does manage to flip the truck over and tear off the doors, so the prison guards can help him place the criminals under arrest. But what ends up surprising them is that inside the truck, there's a rather sweet old lady, who a few seconds later seems to have no idea where she is or what she's done. Peter notices something strange, and he can see something fly out of the old lady and go into the officer behind her, then jump once more into an agent who runs off. This keeps repeating over and over until that thing manages to reach the helicopter where Scorpion is being transferred, and using the officer's authority, it changes the orders and sends Scorpion somewhere else. Then it waits for Peter to show up and tries to get inside his body. Fortunately, Peter manages to force it out, and this seems to interest quite a bit whatever it is that's controlling people, and it takes a moment to tell him that he should have checked the tank before wasting so much time chasing it. This is where we see that there was a very powerful explosive inside the tank, and there are only 3 seconds left before it goes off, creating the perfect distraction for that thing to escape, while Peter is left just as confused as everyone else. Detective DeWolf shows up a few seconds later to tell him that none of this makes any sense. The old lady doesn't remember anything that happened, nor do any of the people who acted against their will, and Peter assures her that something seems to have been controlling their minds, though he has no idea what it could be, so he'll go talk to a friend. A while later, we see him arrive at a spa, where a very beautiful woman is waiting for him in a hot bath and asks him to take off his suit and join her. She's his contact at Damage Control, and she tells him she isn't really sure about something related to mind control. But there have been 3 attacks in the last month, with similar effects. But something strange did catch her attention. During the attacks, the database was hacked using 30 different employee credentials, and they all searched for the same thing, VMAX. She has no idea what it is or what that code refers to, but it's strange that everyone searched for it at the same time. With a bit more information, Peter decides to head straight to the Damage Control office to meet with the director, a man named Bill Mesker, who welcomes him to the Damage Control office, the ones responsible for cleaning up all his mess from that morning, and who might have answers about what's going on. During the tour, Peter can see the samurai he fought before, the ones who called themselves the Hand, who are now working for Damage Control and have become their best security team. There, Peter can also see that they've been taking advantage of what they find during their battles to do some good for society, when he notices that they have Shocker's fists and have made a few upgrades to them. They're up against an enemy who can get inside people's minds and take possession of them, and he also knows that thing tried it with him, and it didn't work. He ends up admitting that, because of certain rules about his job, he can't tell him everything that's going on, but he's convinced that Peter is one of the people who can help them defeat that thing, since no one has been able to resist its control, and that's very valuable. Later that same day, Peter takes off his suit and heads to the coffee shop where MJ works to see her for a while, even though she has no idea who he is. There, he gets a call from DeWolf, who tells him Scorpion escaped. Basically, the security guard walked him right to the door, but Peter had already planned ahead for this, and he hacked into the police system to set up cameras all over the city and add his biometric pattern so it triggers an alert if he shows up anywhere. Ned shows up a few minutes later and tries to flirt with the cashier on duty, and even though he does it terribly, Peter can't help feeling really happy to see him doing something like that. It turns out Ned is carrying a huge amount of beer, so Peter decides to follow him and make sure he doesn't get into trouble. A while later, he ends up at a party packed with people he doesn't know, but he tries to blend in and not draw attention. There, he finds a wall covered in Spider-Man sightings, with lots of notes about his possible identity, as if someone had been obsessed with figuring out the face behind the hero. 2 seconds later, Ned shows up and tries to explain how weird his board is. It turns out Spider-Man saved his life and his friends' lives several times, and ever since then he's been a bit obsessed with figuring out his identity. Nothing weird at all, just so he can thank him in person for who he is. In fact, he invented an app that tracks his sightings, the Spider Tracker, an app that everyone in the city knows, and there are lots of people like him who want to know who's behind the mask. His research has led him to 2 main suspects, and when he reveals who they are, he couldn't be further from the truth, because in the photos, he finds Flash and his professor. At that moment, MJ shows up, and Peter can't help but stand there speechless for a few seconds. When she asks his name, he just stammers the word Maynard and has to stick with that for now. So he just hands her the flowers he was holding and hopes that will get him some of her attention. A few seconds later, he finds out she went to her first job interview today and got the job as expected. But in the end, she turned it down since she doesn't want to work for a heartless corporation and she'll keep looking at other options. Seeing how much his friends and the girl he loves have grown up in such a short time makes Peter feel really good for them. But a few seconds later, something happens that turns his world upside down. It turns out MJ has a boyfriend, and watching him kiss her lips hurts a lot more than any of the battles he's faced before. That's why it's no surprise to see Peter running across the rooftop a few seconds later and jumping off into the void, hoping this is just a nightmare, but it isn't. As he swung through the air, he couldn't help reliving every moment he'd shared with her, back when they swore their love and promised never to separate. But all of that is now in the past, and he has to accept the cost of his sacrifice. A few minutes later, while reading for the 1000th time the letter she wrote him, he notices something strange happening to his arm, and then a sudden pain hits him. The strangest part is that his eyes turn completely black, and shortly after, he passes out. During that time, he has a vision of his aunt trying to give him some advice. But then, when he wakes up, he discovers that he's almost naked, in the middle of a cocoon, hanging from the edge of a building. 2 seconds later, he falls into the void, and the strangest thing happens right now, when a web shoots out from his hand, not from his web shooter, but from inside his own body, just like his counterpart from another universe. After this, the fall isn't the worst part, but realizing that his body is changing in a strange way, and his forearms hurt quite a bit. So he tries to get back into the building through the basement, but it turns out he isn't as sneaky as a spider, and ends up getting caught by a neighbor. The strangest thing of all is that his apartment is completely covered in webs, and there are several alerts on his computer that he should pay attention to. After running several tests, the results show that his spider DNA seems to be overtaking his human DNA. This might be related to a trauma he recently went through, and the computer tells him he can't use the organic webs and the web shooters at the same time. On top of that, his senses are extremely heightened, which could cause him problems, and he should take some time to rest and rebalance himself. After putting on his web shooters while trying to ignore the computer's warnings, his body seems to reject them, and they end up firing forward with great force. So now he has no choice but to learn how to use the organic webs. But when he climbs up to the roof to practice, his new, super heightened senses make him hear even the tiniest drop of water hitting the ground. Out of nowhere, Peter can hear everything happening in the city, which means he'll basically have to learn how to be Spider-Man all over again, but this time on the hardest difficulty. On his first attempt with the organic webs, they end up grossing him out completely, and it takes him a couple of seconds to get his hand in the right position so they'll come out properly. Suddenly, his hand starts shooting webs in every direction, like some kind of cannon he can't control, but he needs to hurry, since the city's cameras have picked up Scorpion attacking a building, and it's time to get to work. When he finally manages to swing through the city, he realizes these webs are much more powerful than the old ones, and the initial momentum sends him crashing straight into a water tank. But he needs to get through this tutorial quickly, since the city is in trouble. Scorpion has gotten his mechanical suit back and is attacking damage control offices all over the city, looking for the supposed V-Max. Luckily, Peter shows up just in time, and even though he has a pretty rough landing, he still knows how to act like a hero and fight Scorpion. But even though they've faced each other before, this Scorpion has new moves, and this is where he realizes that thing is controlling him. With his next attack, the villain tries to run him through the neck, and the only thing stopping the huge stinger is Peter's hands, which won't hold out forever. But this is where things change again, and his eyes turn black once more. At that instant, the computer shows him that his spider DNA is taking over, and Peter gains a strength he didn't have before, along with a fury he doesn't seem able to control. Not only does he manage to defeat Scorpion in a single attack, but he grabs him by his stinger and slams him against the ground, completely ignoring the fact that he hit a patrol car and could have killed an innocent person in the middle of the fight. DeWolf shows up a few seconds later, and she watches as Spider-Man attacks Scorpion out of control until he breaks several of his bones, and that thing leaves his body, leaving behind a man in pain, begging him not to hurt him anymore. The officers in the patrol car are badly hurt, and a few seconds later, Peter's eyes go back to normal. So he tries to go over and apologize to them, but the detective stops him and asks him what on earth is happening to him. Peter tells her there's some kind of thing that takes possession of people and is looking for something called VMAX. DeWolf tells him he has to go back to being himself. Whatever is happening to him, she won't be able to protect him if he hurts innocent people again. The next morning, the headaches keep coming, and Peter goes to college to look for help, managing to make it to Dr. Banner's class, an expert in keeping nature contained. After waiting for the class to end, Peter goes up to him, but the huge headache won't let him string two words together, so he needs a couple of seconds to explain what's happening to him. He wants to know how he built the inhibitor that keeps him human, and Banner explains that basically this little device keeps him focused and keeps him from turning into the giant that destroys everything. A few minutes into the conversation, Peter asks the question he's been wanting to ask. He wants to know if his inhibitor can be set to stop another kind of mutating DNA. And because of how smart the question is, Banner realizes he isn't one of his students. Basically, what Peter wants to know is whether he can use the inhibitor to stop certain bad aspects of the mutation and only keep the good ones, which would be extremely dangerous and irresponsible since nature always finds a way. At home, Peter becomes obsessed with building his own inhibitor and setting it to his specific DNA chain, trying to block his anger attacks and the moments when he loses control. The device seems to work as it should. His spider DNA levels drop back down to the balanced point where they were before, and Peter decides to head out into the city to run a few tests. Unfortunately, this doesn't last long, since his spider DNA ends up overpowering the inhibitor, and it overheats to the point of exploding, along with his web shooters, which end up turning an alley into one giant web. A few seconds later, that thing shows up to torment him and tells him that no matter what he does, he won't be able to get rid of the demon inside him, though it still has a certain curiosity, since he's the only one it hasn't been able to fully possess, and that keeps it fascinated. So after he beat Scorpion and got rid of his main tool, it spent a couple of hours looking into his life. Now it knows his name is Peter Parker, that he lives alone, that he has some really good tech gear at home, but that he also has someone he cares about, and that's exactly what it plans to use to get him to bring it the VMAX. When Peter realizes that thing knows about MJ's existence, he traps it with his webs, but it starts jumping from person to person and tells him it's challenging him to a race. And the kid watches as that thing starts hopping from person to person, heading toward MJ's apartment. So now he has to hurry and try to master his new powers before the girl he loves ends up caught by whatever that thing is. On his way there, he loses his balance and crashes into a wedding hall, landing on the cake and completely ruining the celebration. Even though things don't look good at all, Peter realizes that thing is right there with them. A few seconds later, our hero realizes that the helicopter the couple was supposed to leave for their honeymoon in has been hijacked by that thing, so he shoots his web at it and grabs onto the aircraft. During the flight, while trying to hang on to the helicopter, he asks Evie to analyze the jumping pattern of that thing and realizes it has a distance limit, so as long as no one else gets close to it, he can keep it inside the pilot. So he takes advantage of his new webs, much stronger than before, and leaves the helicopter completely hanging from a huge crane. As long as no one gets within 33 feet of it, that thing won't be able to escape from there, and he'll have the time he needs to get to MJ's apartment and get her out of there as soon as possible. Against all odds, MJ doesn't seem surprised by Spider-Man's presence in her apartment, and when he tells her she's in danger and needs to be taken somewhere safe, she believes him. Once they're on a rooftop where that thing surely can't follow them, Peter doesn't have a good reason to explain why he got her out of her apartment, but MJ does, and she tells him she's sure they knew each other in the past. This idea has been driving her crazy for years. It wasn't just what happened in Washington, also in London and in Prague, and that strange thing with the nocturnal monkey. Sure, running into Spider-Man twice is a coincidence, but it's like he's her own personal guardian until what happened in New York. The Statue of Liberty. Maybe he'll think she's crazy, but she's sure they were something, friends, or maybe something more. For a long time, she's felt like someone scrambled her brain, but she's been putting the pieces together little by little, and this is the only logical explanation she can come up with. If there's any truth he can tell her, she needs to know it, because there's definitely a part of her that still remembers. In that defining moment, Mary Jane lifts his mask up to his nose and then kisses him. That kiss seems to trigger something in her mind, and a few seconds later, she calls him by his real name, not the one he made up. But even though this could be the happiest moment in Peter Parker's life so far, it isn't real, because he got it wrong in his analysis, and that thing is inside her and has full control. The idea of a kiss reuniting the lovers is pretty tragic, but it found it amusing. However, now that it's inside her mind, it realizes there isn't a single thought of Peter Parker in there, which means it's rather foolish of him to think she'll actually remember him again. Peter tells it that it's a monster. If it loved something as much as he loves her, it would realize what it just did, and it would be unforgivable. But that's not all. MJ starts walking toward the edge of the building, intending to let herself fall into the void. At that exact instant, the spider DNA takes control, and his eyes turn black, lifting her by the neck and threatening to destroy it if it doesn't leave her alone. But she kicks him in the chest and lets herself fall into the void. Halfway through the fall, that thing leaves her body, and she starts screaming a second before Peter manages to catch her. And even though they have a pretty rough landing, MJ is still alive. A few seconds later, a man shows up, and Peter surrenders to his will. He tells him he'll do whatever they want, but please don't hurt her. This man reveals that they can get inside anyone's mind whenever they want. Distance doesn't matter, and it would be best if he doesn't fail them, because now they know how to really hurt him. The man hands back the letter he wrote MJ so long ago, and tells him they'll be in touch. As the van drives off, Peter can see a girl in the back seat, so he asks Evie to run a biometric scan of her face. The next thing he does is take MJ somewhere safe, to someone who might be able to protect her. But as they get close to this place, they end up setting off a series of traps, and Peter's headache keeps him from keeping her safe for very long. Frank shows up a few seconds later, and Peter tells him he needs his help. He wants to cash in the favor from Staten Island, but Frank tells him this is the last time he'll remind him that he saved his life. Frank takes them to his boat. A few minutes later, Peter gets information from Evie, who has several photos of the girl from the car. She's been running from foster homes and military facilities for a very long time. She's some kind of telepath, a very powerful one, and the name in the files is Jean Grey. Right now, there are only 5 damage control facilities that she hasn't attacked, and he's already set up several alert systems at each one, so all they have to do is wait for the alarm to go off, and they'll know exactly where she is. Now he needs to work on his inhibitor, and MJ gives him the key to making it work, since he hadn't accounted for the magnetic field from her glasses. And once he manages to factor that out of the equation, the inhibitor keeps his spider DNA under control. So Peter makes one for Jean Grey. If he manages to put it on her neck, he'll be able to disable her powers. The next morning, the alarm at the central office goes off. On the cameras, we can see Jean taking down the guards and heading up to Bill's office. But when she can't get into his computer, she decides to go down to the vault, where he and the rest of the scientists have been hiding. Peter shows up a few seconds later and gets the inhibitor ready to put on her neck. But Jean throws something at him that he recognizes, Dr. Banner's inhibitor. And at that moment, a desk slams into him hard. 2 seconds later, Hulk shows up and attacks him with his enormous fists. But before he can kill our hero, Frank shows up and unloads a barrage of bullets at him, managing to distract him long enough for Peter to catch his breath. Although the bullets don't do anything to Hulk, the grenades do manage to distract him long enough, and Peter realizes that every hit Hulk takes, Jim can feel it too, since it takes extra effort on her part. So she decides to abandon him and turns her attention to Frank, managing to take control of him and sending him straight at Peter. The bad news is the kid hasn't managed to keep Banner under control, and an enraged version of Hulk ends up showing up, and that's very bad news. Even though Peter tries to put the universal inhibitor on him, this Hulk isn't nerfed gripped by the plot, and his strength is unmatched. Even a single clap manages to destroy the entire floor. By the time Peter realizes what Frank is doing, he's already got the explosive charges set on the vault door with the detonator in hand. Before he can stop him, Hulk shows up once more and attacks him again, but Peter uses his new webs to keep him pinned to the edge of the building, and then he uses the rubble to keep him held down for a few seconds. There, he tries to use the shocker glove, but Hulk grabs it with his hand and crushes it like a toy. Unable to beat him, Peter decides to appeal to his good side and reveals his identity, which manages to make Banner remember and let himself fall, so Peter can go on with his rescue. In the vault, Jean is interrogating Bill and asking him where she is, but Peter shows up a few seconds later and puts the inhibitor on her neck. Right after, Bill shoots a sedative into her leg, and the terror finally ends, but Jean mentions the name Sarah before passing out. Damage control takes Jean away, and Peter heads straight back to MJ to tell her she's safe now, but he ends up finding her holding the letter. Peter confesses that he loves her, and that he did all this to protect her, but whatever memories he has of her, she doesn't have them. He says he's really sorry this happened to her, but she doesn't love him, and it would be best if he left, but he should tell Ned the truth. He can handle it. And after a talk with his best friend, Peter realizes there's something off about all of this, and that maybe Bill lied to him, so he calls his contact and asks her to dig through the files for the connection between Jean Grey and Sarah. He discovers they're sisters, and that basically Peter handed Jean over to the people holding her sister prisoner, who have been running experiments on her for years. At that moment, we see a flashback to when Sarah was kidnapped by Damage Control. Before they could take her away, she used her powers on Jean to make her walk away and save herself. Now she's tied to a chair, and Bill is telling her that she was blessed with a power too valuable to waste. She's meant to change the world, and with his help, she'll manage it, but he won't tell her where Sarah is. Instead, he activates a machine that starts scanning her brain to find a way to control her. Luckily, Peter has made it to the facility and tries to be friendly about it, but the guards are in attack mode, and he needs a few seconds to get ready. After stretching, he kicks the guards' butts, but Bill finds out they're under attack and sends in every unit, including the hand samurai, to hold the hero off long enough. Unfortunately, the machine doesn't just copy the person's brain, it also damages it as it does its work. And as Jean is nearing her limit, she manages to see what VMAX actually means. It's the brand name on the fan above the chair where she's sitting right now, where her sister most likely died. This unleashes a rage in her, and when Bill thinks he can shut down the machine and fully subdue her powers with the inhibitor, Jean shows him the enormous power she has, causing a massive shockwave that tears through the entire facility and reaches all the way to the city. Suddenly, time seems to stop inside the area around the wave, and Frank realizes something very bad is about to happen. Back with Jean, she rips the inhibitor off her neck and frees herself from the chair, then picks up her sister's lock of hair and realizes she's no longer part of this world. A few seconds later, she notices Peter approaching, so she sends the hand samurai to ask him what he wants. He realizes his mistake and knows what they did to her sister. Jean doesn't need his help, and she tells him that Damage Control will do the same thing to him once he steps out of line, since they have an entire facility to bring him under control, and he's a fool if he thinks he can trust them. The ninjas attack him all at once in a perfectly coordinated and super cool way, so Peter has to get extra clever to beat them. In the middle of the fight, Frank calls him to tell him that almost the whole city is frozen and that people's brains are about to turn to mush, so if he's going to do something, he needs to do it now. But the ninjas are too strong and too coordinated to beat the conventional way, and facing defeat, Peter can't help having a vision of everyone he's lost in moments like this one, so he decides to take off the inhibitor and let his spider DNA take control, unleashing a strength he didn't have before, his skin becoming so tough that swords shatter on contact, and his senses becoming nearly impenetrable. On top of that, his web is so strong and fast that it manages to build an entire nest in an instant. He traps all the ninjas and manages to reach Jean, who is about to kill Bill. But Peter assures her that this won't bring back the person she loves. He knows that all too well, but Jean doesn't believe him, so he decides to enter her mind now that he's fully mastered his power, and he sees that Spider-Man's losses are far greater than what she's going through. Jean puts herself in his place and gets a hug from Aunt May, who has just the right words to make her pain much less powerful and show her that Even though they're on opposite sides, they're very much alike. This makes Jean finally let her guard down, but a moment later, she hears a gunshot, and Peter does what he has to do to keep her safe, taking the bullet Frank had fired to put an end to all of this. The next thing Frank sees is his friend and our hero collapsing, as a pool of blood spreads behind him. With his last words, Peter tells her she's not alone. She'll find people who love her. In the next scene, we see Frank carrying Spider-Man to the hospital, and then we see all of New York City coming together and in prayer for their hero to survive. Fortunately, Peter survives the gunshot, thanks to Jean's help, who used her powers to ease the pain, and Frank is there when he wakes up to apologize and tell him there's someone who wants to see him. Outside the hospital, there are thousands of people waiting for good news, but all Peter wants to do is see MJ. So Frank covers for him, and as he's making his way through the crowd, he peeks out with his mask on to be the perfect distraction. A few days later, our hero is almost fully recovered, thanks to the new changes happening in his body, and he decides to visit the coffee shop, where he finds Ned and greets him with their ultra-secret high school handshake. And just like what happened with MJ, Ned remembers his real name. Then the scene fades to black, giving us the end of the movie. And for the true fans who stayed until the very end for the post-credits scene, here is what happens. At first, we see the Spider Tracker, the app created by Ned to track our hero. The signal places him in Queens, acting as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but then his icon moves further and further away until it reaches outer space. So perhaps this is just a small hint that a much larger, Avengers-level adventure requires his assistance. Let's hope his new powers and abilities are up to the challenge.